There are 5 questions you must never answer, and the people asking them cannot be trusted. These aren't complicated questions. They're not interrogations. They're not obvious traps with flashing warning signs. They're the opposite. They're soft. They're warm. They sound like someone who cares about you, someone who respects you, someone who just wants to talk. And that's what makes them lethal, because the most dangerous questions in the world don't sound dangerous. They sound like friendship. They sound like honesty. They sound like trust. And by the time you realize what they actually were, you've already given something away that you can never take back. People destroy themselves not in battles, but in conversations. A single wrong answer at the wrong table costs someone their alliances, their reputation, or their power. The people who fall aren't the ones who get attacked openly. They're the ones who get asked the right question at the right moment by the right person, and they answer fully, honestly, because it felt safe. I'm going to show you all 5 questions, and the 5th one is the root, the one that makes the other 4 possible. If you can learn to never answer that one question, the other 4 lose most of their power over you. But you need to see the first 4 to understand why the 5th one is the one that matters most. Now, before we go into these 5 questions, I want to be clear about something. This is not about becoming paranoid. This is not about assuming everyone around you is a threat. This is about protection, understanding which questions are safe to answer and which ones are designed to take something from you that you didn't mean to give. That's not distrust, that's intelligence. Here's what most people don't realize. You were trained from childhood to answer every question that comes your way. A teacher asks, you answer. A parent asks, you answer. An authority figure asks, you comply. That training made you obedient. It didn't make you powerful. Power starts the moment you realize that not every question deserves your truth, that the space between someone asking and you answering is the most important moment in any conversation. In that space, you either keep your power or hand it over. Right now, that space doesn't exist for you. By the end of this video, it will, and it will never go away. Let's get into it. The first question you must never answer, and this one happens to you constantly, at work, at home, with friends, with family, you'll recognize it the moment I say it. Someone does something that affects you. They make a decision without asking. They cross a boundary. They commit to something on your behalf. They change the plan. They give away your time. And after it's already done, after the action is already taken, they look at you and ask, "You don't mind, right?" Or "That's okay with you, isn't it?" Or "You're fine with that, right?" Stop. Listen to what just happened. They're not asking your permission. They already acted. The decision is made. The thing is done. That question is not a question. It's a notification dressed as a request. And the way it's worded traps you into agreeing, because the expected answer is, "No, I don't mind." Anything else, anything that sounds like, "Actually, I do mind," makes you look difficult, petty, unreasonable. The question has been engineered so that disagreement costs you socially, and most people will absorb the violation and say it's fine, rather than pay that cost. The person asking knows this. That's exactly why they did the thing first and asked the question second. Think about how many times this has happened to you. Someone gave away your Saturday without asking, and then said, "You don't mind helping out, right?" Someone shared something private about you, and then said, "You're not upset about that, are you?" Someone took credit for your work, and then said, "We're a team, so it doesn't matter who gets the credit, right?" Someone volunteered your time, your money, your energy, your name, and then checked in afterward with a question that made saying no feel like starting a war. Watch what happens when you answer this question with, "It's fine." You think you're being easygoing. You think you're keeping the peace. But the person who asked just learned something about you. They learned that they can act first and get your approval afterward. And they will do it again. And the next time, the violation will be a little bigger, a little more invasive, a little more costly, because every time you sign off on something you didn't choose, you raise the limit on what they think they can take without asking. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see, but few can touch. Appearances matter more than reality, and the question, "You don't mind," creates the appearance of consent. It makes it look like you agreed. It makes it look like you were consulted. And if you ever bring it up later, they'll say, "But you said you were fine with it." The question didn't just get your compliance, it got your signature on a contract you never read. So, when someone hits you with "you don't mind," you don't nod, you don't say "it's fine." You say, "Actually, I would have preferred if you'd asked me first," or "I would have handled that differently." You don't need to be angry, you don't need to make a scene. You just don't say yes when everything in the dynamic is pressuring you to say yes. And the moment you stop automatically signing off on things you didn't choose, something shifts. People stop informing you, they start consulting you. That shift from someone people act on to someone people check with changes your entire position, and it starts with refusing to answer one question. That's the first question you must never answer, the retroactive permission trap. But the second question is harder to spot, because it doesn't come after a violation, it comes before one. It arrives disguised as something a good friend would say, something that sounds like courage, like respect. And because of that disguise, you open the door every single time. What is it? The second question you must never answer, and this one is dangerous because it makes you feel like saying no makes you weak. Someone looks at you and says, "Can I be honest with you?" And you say, "Of course." Every time, every single time. Because what kind of person says no to honesty? What kind of person refuses truth? So you say yes, and in that moment you've given someone permission to say whatever they want, while framing it as a gift they're giving you. Think about the last time someone said, "Can I be honest with you?" What followed? Was it something that lifted you up? Was it something that expanded your thinking? Or was it something that planted a seed of doubt? Something that made you second-guess yourself? "I don't think this is going to work. I don't think you're ready. I'm not sure you're making the right choice." And because they asked permission first, because they called it honesty, you're not allowed to be upset. They were just being honest. They were just trying to help. But watch the pattern across your life. The person who says, "Can I be honest with you?" almost never follows it with something that builds your confidence. They follow it with criticism, with doubt, with something that slows you down. And they get to do all of this while standing behind the shield of the word honest. You can't attack honesty. You can't be angry at someone who is just telling the truth. Except they weren't telling truth, they were telling their perspective, and they weaponized one word to make that perspective unchallengeable. Now think about the people who actually care about you, the ones who genuinely have your back. When they have something difficult to say, do they ask permission first? No, they just say it. Because real honesty doesn't need a runway. Real honesty doesn't need you to lower your defenses before it arrives. The people who ask, "Can I be honest with you?" ask because they know what they're about to say won't feel like care, and they need your agreement to receive it before you hear it. Because if they just said it cold, you'd recognize it for what it was. The preamble is the disguise. Remove the disguise, and the thing underneath is naked. The greatest manipulations are the ones disguised as virtue. When someone wraps their strike in the language of honesty or courage or care, you can't fight back without looking like the problem. You become the person who can't handle truth, the sensitive one, and they become the brave friend who is just looking out for you. The frame is rigged before the conversation starts. Watch what happens when you stop accepting the premise. Someone asks, "Can I be honest with you?" Instead of saying, "Of course," you say, "Depends on what it's about." Or you say, "You can say whatever you want, I'll decide what I do with it." Most people stutter, they hesitate, they backtrack, because the whole strategy was built on you saying yes automatically. The moment you don't, the shield drops. They have to say the thing without the armor of honesty protecting them, and suddenly it sounds a lot less like truth and a lot more like what it always was, an opinion they wanted to deliver without consequences. That's the second question, the honesty disguise. 2 questions down, 2 traps recognized. You're already seeing conversations differently than most people ever will. Most people go their whole lives absorbing these 2 questions without ever recognizing the mechanism. You see it now, and that changes how people interact with you from this point forward. But the third question operates in completely different territory. The first 2 took something from you in the moment. The third one makes you carry something that isn't yours, something heavy. And the weight follows you for months, sometimes years, without you realizing you picked it up voluntarily. What is it? The third question you must never answer, and this one is the most flattering trap of all 5, because it makes you feel important right before it makes you responsible. Somebody asks you, "What would you do if you were me?" A friend, a colleague, a family member. They lay out their situation, a problem, a crossroads, a decision they can't make. And then they look at you with that expression that says, "I trust your judgment more than my own." "What would you do?" And you answer, of course. You answer because it feels good to be the one someone turns to, because it feels like respect. So you weigh the options, you think about it carefully, and you give them your honest recommendation. But here's what actually happened. That person had a decision to make, a decision with real consequences. And instead of carrying the full weight of that decision on their own shoulders, they transferred part of it to yours. Because now, if they follow your advice and it works, who gets the credit? They do. They made the right call. Your name disappears. But if they follow your advice and it fails, who gets the blame? You. You told them to do it. They remember your exact words, they replay the conversation, and they hold you responsible for a decision that was never yours to make. Think about a time you gave someone advice, and it didn't work out the way you said it would. Did they own the decision, or did they come back to you with, "You told me to do this. You said this was the right move"? Maybe they didn't say it out loud, but you felt it. The weight of a choice that wasn't yours to make landed on you anyway, because you put your fingerprints on someone else's decision. And fingerprints are evidence. And sometimes the person asking isn't confused at all. They've already decided. They already know what they want to do. But they want someone else's name attached to the decision in case it collapses. A backup, a fall guy. And by answering "What would you do if you were me?" you volunteer for that role without knowing you auditioned. A prince must always take counsel, but only when he wishes, not when others wish. Giving guidance on someone else's terms puts you at their mercy. The moment you prescribe a path for another person's life, you inherit the consequences of that path without any of the control. So when someone asks, "What would you do if you were me?" you don't give them the answer, you give them something better. You ask, "What are you leaning toward?" You say, "It sounds like you already know what you want to do." You put the decision back in their hands without touching it. You can listen, you can support, you can ask questions that help them think, but you never put your name on a choice that someone else has to live with. Let people own their own decisions. Your recommendations about other people's lives stay safest in the only place nobody can hold them against you, inside your head. That's the third question, the decision transfer. Free questions, compliance, honesty, decisions, all protected now. But the fourth question shifts into darker territory. The first three were about what people take from you, your agreement, your guard, your name. The fourth takes something from someone who isn't even in the room, and you become the weapon without knowing you were loaded. What is it? The fourth question you must never answer, and this one should make you angry when you realize how many times it's been used on you. You confront someone. You bring up something you heard, something you saw, something you know. Maybe a lie they told, maybe a move they made behind your back, maybe information that proves they aren't who they claim to be. And instead of addressing what you just said, instead of dealing with the substance of what you brought to the table, they look at you and ask, "Who told you that?" And the entire conversation pivots. Suddenly, you're not talking about what they did, you're talking about how you found out. They've redirected the entire confrontation away from their behavior and aimed it at your source. And if you answer, if you give them a name, you've done two catastrophic things at once. You've betrayed the person who trusted you with that information, and you've given the person you're confronting a target, someone to punish, someone to discredit, someone to cut off, so the flow of truth stops and they can go back to operating in the dark. Think about every time someone has deflected your confrontation with "Who told you that?" Did the conversation ever return to the original issue? Almost never, because the redirect worked. You got pulled into defending your source, explaining how you found out, justifying why you were even looking into it. And the whole time, the person who actually did the thing sat back and watched you scramble. They turned your confrontation into your problem with 4 words, and you helped them do it by answering. Watch what happens when you give up the name. The person you were confronting now has a new mission, not to address what they did, to eliminate whoever exposed it. They go after your source, they cut them off, they discredit them, they make sure nobody tells you anything ever again. And the next time they do something behind your back, you won't hear about it, because the one person who would have told you has been burned by you. Because you answered a question that was never about truth, it was about control. It was about shutting down the only eyes and ears you had. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at